I think if you get to the point of quiet quitting, you're essentially what they call a Harvey Norman.
Why?
You get to 3 years and you have no interest.
Oh, let's start this thing, Paul. Welcome back to Ask the Duo podcast, a podcast where we aim to build better mindset for better relationships.
Yeah, and speaking of relationship, we're actually talking about that today, but not your typical lovey-dovey, lovers in the air kind of relationship, but relationship with your own self and your mind. So, Sam, what are we talking about?
Well, today, question for you both. Have you ever been in a position where you're unhappy with your current job, but you're unsure whether your mental health is being affected or you're feeling stagnant and you're obviously wanting to leave or you're thinking of leaving?
Yeah, that's definitely something that's crossed my mind many times within the most recent years. So for me, definitely yes. And yeah, like on top of that, that question that you just asked, something else that we're going to talk about is like, is it okay to quit your job without anything lined up?
Yeah, that's a good one.
And speaking of that, we have a special guest who did exactly that, quitting his job with nothing lined up. And we're just going to welcome Hao Tran.
Mr. Hao Tran, welcome, mate.
Ahoy, hoy.
Oh, ahoy.
Ahoy, hoy.
But before we get started and dig deep into these topics, give our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you did before you quit your job.
I was a project manager in a digital design agency, a small startup. Did that for about 3 years. And during that time, I kind of pivoted from project management to UI, UX design, product design. Prior to that, I was working in a cloud service provider, still in IT. Did about 8 years
Wow.
in that company.
No.
Started from level 1 tech support there and worked my way up, climbed the corporate ladder.
Did you turn off your computer and turn it back on?
I did many times.
That's the advice to people, eh? Just
Pretty much.
Reboot your PC.
Yeah.
What's my password to my email?
Yeah, prior to that, so going back further than that, I studied visual communication design at uni. So I started off my career in design, but then that kind of fell over and I found myself in a position where I wasn't sure what I wanted to do at that point in my life.
Yeah.
I didn't really have the guidance. So yeah, I dabbled in different industries, different jobs just to find myself, find what I was passionate about. And I was presented an opportunity to jump into a entry-level role in an IT company. And I took the bull by the horns, as they say, and
I ran with
it.
Nice.
Yeah, and kind of just, it was a steep learning curve, but I just stuck with it.
Yeah, that's usually how a lot of careers start. Like they studied something particularly, but they couldn't find a job in that position, and then they just got offered an opportunity and they just started in a whole different area, like completely different or like a little bit different. So yeah, interested to dig into that as well. But to start off with, because recently you did quit your job without anything lined up, could we just get a little background of like what happened or like what inspired you to quit without having anything lined up?
Send it.
So I didn't quit with absolutely nothing lined up. It was kind of pre-planned. So going back 5 or so years ago in my previous IT cloud service provider job, I started to struggle there as the work environment was a bit toxic and I kind of felt lost at times with where I was going. And so I started planning at that point, like, okay, I need to get out of this job and jump into like something else. I just thought the grass was going to be greener on the other side. I stayed there. I stayed there for another few years. And to put it into an analogy, it's kind of like a fart, right? The harder you push it, just turns to shit. And that's basically that's what happened.
Nice.
That's so funny. That's actually real. I'm sure everyone can relate to that.
So it's one of those farts where you're trying to push it out, but then what? It just
turned to shit. It just like
splattered.
you end up with shit everywhere basically.
Yeah.
And I thought at the time, I listened to like family members and other external people sort of telling me, I just stick with it. It's just temporary. It's like, it's a good job because it's in tech.
Yeah,
But
IT.
they don't understand that IT is a very stressful industry because you're dealing with people's problems all the time.
yeah.
No one ever calls up and says, "Hey, good job." They're calling up and say, "Hey, man, the computer's fucked.
Yeah.
Can you turn it off and on again or something
My
like that?"
website's not
Yeah.
working.
Yeah, pretty much. And because I was working at a company where it was a service provider, so we were expected to have 99.9% uptime. If something did fall over, it
You
was
have to be ready to.
absolutely stressful
Yeah.
in my position. So I worked my way up to service delivery management, and essentially I was the punching bag between the customer and our company.
Yeah.
So I was the first port of call. As soon as something fell over, it was my head on the line. And I had to be available 24/7 basically because of our SLAs.
Yeah, because
Shit.
IT is usually like very on call. And
Exactly,
you have
yeah.
to be ready to see what went wrong.
Yep. Yeah, so that took its toll on my mental health. And I think being in a work environment where I didn't quite have the support from senior management, it was very hard because you were always kind of fighting to, that sink or swim feeling.
Yep.
It felt like you were always sinking. So there was a point where I knew it was bad because it was affecting me physically. I was getting panic attacks and couldn't sleep at night. So I reached out for professional help. And at that point, it was the first step in my journey to, where I am now. I realized that work is work. Basically, you need to set clear boundaries, protect your mental well-being, your own energy. I'm the type of person that absorbs other people's energy a lot easier than most, I guess. So if I'm in a room and there's people that are down or depressed, it kind of rubs
You
off
can
on me.
feel
Yeah,
that.
it's being in an environment like that where people don't really support what you're doing, and
They're
you
all just there to work for the sake
exactly,
of
yeah,
working.
exactly.
Yeah.
Everyone's there just doing their own thing.
Everyone for themselves in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And even though it was an organization, it wasn't quite organized.
Yeah.
I think that's the same theme across other people's professional careers in their own industries.
But because you stayed in that for 8 years, were you actually enjoying learning the IT things, like outside of the atmosphere and the culture? Did you enjoy the process of being in that?
Yeah, so I've always been a curious individual. Even as a kid, I'd stuff sandwiches in VCRs and and eat leaves off indoor plants.
What the?
Didn't quite get to eating crayons, but I when I landed this position, I was really interested in the way the organization worked. It's a whole new world to me.
Just IT, the
Yeah,
industry.
because I was in an environment where there's data center rooms, there's servers and stuff. That's something you only see in movies, right?
Yeah, true.
Does it actually look like those stock images where it's just rows of like
Pretty much,
servers?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just rows of just blinking lights.
Yeah.
That's
And-
cool.
And
Yeah.
some dude
Entered in the
walking
Matrix.
Yeah, so I had no idea what that was all about, and it wasn't all just bad vibes there. I did work with some really awesome people who mentored me and kind of showed me the ropes. So I stuck there and I just learnt as much as I could, with the end goal to jump ship elsewhere. But I got to 7-8 years or so, and I realized at that point it's not for me.
Yeah. In terms of going back to saying how you were quitting, and you said that you didn't exactly have nothing lined up. So when you
Mhm.
said that it started from that position, what were you planning at that point in time when you were planning to leave?
I always wanted to start my own business or do some sort of business related thing. I realized at that point that I would be better off probably working for myself. So I started planning that out. So obviously you need some startup capital. So then, looking at my financial situation at that point, what could I do with what I had to continue hustling, basically working, building up that capital before I could reinvest it into a business or my own side venture kind of thing. I let my nerves get the better of me at that point, and I ended up just jumping straight into another IT job with another company doing the exact same thing. And I was in the exact same position as I
Nerves,
was.
as in you were too scared to actually start something on
Yeah,
your own,
yeah,
or
yeah. I was just too scared to do something of my own.
yeah,
Just the thought of, going from a nice, comfortable, full-time
The
role,
stability.
yeah, the
stable.
stability, into something unknown. It was really daunting.
But did you have everything lined up? Like you already knew what you wanted to do, what like how you're gonna start it and all that, and then it was just the nerves that kicked you back.
I had some idea, but not any, like I didn't have anything solid. I just knew I wanted to do something business related. I hadn't actually started exploring what exactly I was going to do.
Yeah, like it put like a little limiting belief on
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, pretty much. And then I decided to jump to software and app development because, coming from, I kind of pivoted really, like, you're still in IT, you're jumping from an environment where you're dealing with putting out fires and people's problems, to actually building stuff that solves problems.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
that really stood out to me, and I made that transition at that point, and it was pretty simple to do because it's still within, the IT realm, even though the concepts were different. I started off in that world of design.
Yeah.
I did a bit of web design way back before my 8-year stint.
Mm.
So then it's kind of like, jumping back on the bike and going for another ride.
That's kind of cool because like even though you didn't think about ending in IT, all that like the journey,
Yeah.
it's added to what you needed to get to this. Well, the job that you had before you just quit.
Yep. And yeah, while I was there, I was presented with an opportunity to invest in a startup software company that kind of ticked a box that I previously had of wanting to start my own thing.
Mm.
But this time it was, with a bunch of other guys that had previous experience starting up businesses, working with small to medium sized enterprises.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like,
You're not on your own.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah. That's an
So,
awesome
yeah, that's a good
opportunity.
point.
Yeah.
So fast forward 3 and a bit years, I reevaluated my position where I was, and I just decided that, I spent all these years just working my ass off, becoming an anxious mess at some point.
Yeah. While feeding your curiosity.
Yeah, there's a bit of scrambling here and there, trying to decide what I wanted to do with myself. And now I'm at the point now where I know myself well enough that I know my next steps from here.
Mm.
So I just threw in the towel. I just resigned,
Okay.
and
Just YOLO,
yeah,
whatever.
just yeah.
So what was the exact reason for quitting? Like just resigning and
I decided that I wanted to work on myself. I wanted to level up because working in stressful environments, it's really draining on you. Even if you don't realize it, you go day by day, and then you do 9 to 5, come home, and you're just drained.
yeah.
You don't. Sometimes you just don't have the energy to do your own thing. Like
Yeah.
if you want to start a business, a side hustle or something, it's really hard. Yeah.
That's exactly how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, yeah. So time is a currency you can only spend once. You can't. You're limited with the time you have.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
why would you spend a bunch of your time killing yourself essentially in jobs that you don't feel passionate about, or
It's not working towards your end goal. I guess,
exactly, yeah, yeah. And along the way you're working with people who are either batteries or vacuums. They either suck your energy or they
Yeah, that
give you
is so
energy.
true.
That's a really good
Yeah.
way of describing it. I think the analogy that you use, how time is a currency that you have to spend wisely,
Exactly.
and that is really true when you think about it, right? And I think a lot of people don't think about it.
Yeah, and you can't use money to buy time at all.
You can't buy
you've
shit
only
with time, brother.
Yeah. You've only got what you've got, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And you don't know how much time you've got.
Yeah.
So going back to the fart analogy before, I decided.
Boys will be boys.
So essentially, I'm taking the approach of being
Just letting it out.
a ninja fart, like
Yeah.
being silent but deadly. Like pulling myself back.
Like the one I did at that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the one that Sam cleared out an entire bubble tea shop with.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, that was.
Yeah, so we were like, for the listeners, we were sitting at this bubble tea shop and the table was cornered into like between, was it the glass window and a wall? And he was sitting on the inside. So to go out, to step out at all, everyone had to move out. And he did a silent but deadly fart.
It was bad.
And everyone in this milk tea shop just cleared out.
Yeah, it was. You gotta admit, it was impressive.
No.
It was impressive, all right? It cleared that fucking shop like
Yeah,
a nuclear fucking Hiroshima, mate. Fucking destroyed the shit out there, mate. Hey?
If you ever need to clear out someone in the split of a second.
Yeah, just beef and corner them in the corner and they're screwed.
And it's the ones that follow you when you move.
Yeah, it was funny because I moved and it felt
trails behind
like
you.
trailed. So.
Yeah, but back onto that. So would you say that you ended up choosing to prioritize your mental health, and that's like the main reason of leaving?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the type of guy that earlier in my life I would always listen to parents or family, and as I got older and I followed what they did or what they told me to do, I realized that they're not necessarily right all the time.
Of course, yeah.
So I switched to kind of following my gut instinct, and now in my current situation, that's what I've done. I've just followed my heart rather than my head.
Yeah.
And kind of just trust the process, I guess.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really good though, because a lot of people do struggle with that. Like, it's not about just going, AWOL and letting yourself go and just go ham and do whatever you want. It's like, it's still calculated risk.
Exactly.
But it's just listening to your gut feeling, your intuition, and trusting that process, like you said, Hal, and just following that. A lot of people just are a bit afraid of that, including our parents, especially the Asian generation before us. They need that stability, especially back then, because of how they came over to Australia. They needed something like a job to keep them going. So it's understandable, but a lot of people are just afraid to let go and trust their own gut feeling.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to make. I think as human beings, that fear is there to keep you safe. And yeah, it's a good instinct to have if there were saber-toothed tigers running around and you're trying to hunt for food. But we're in an age where that's not a relevant.
Yeah, it doesn't happen.
It's not like a live or die type situation, but it's still there in our minds.
Yeah.
And I think that's what keeps a lot of people in their comfort zones. They're just too scared to take risks. And for me, going back to what I said before, I was shit scared of taking the leap and starting a business. And I went on a bit of a personal development journey at that point, just reading up on different things and listening to podcasts. And you soon realize that you don't have enough time to sit around and be scared of stuff. You're just wasting your life doing that,
or even just wasting your time sitting around worrying about the future as well. Like,
exactly.
You just got to do something about it. Whether personally is to stay in your current job and try and work it out there, or leave it and find a different way.
Yep.
Yeah, life is all about experiences, man. Like you just gotta fucking send it, do it,
pretty much.
Learn it, make the mistakes, and then that's your life lesson. Like
Yeah.
you said, fucking time is a currency that you got to spend wisely. So it's like, dude, if you can do it now, do it now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
So I can definitely resonate with that, because there are so many like moments when I look back, it's just like, fuck, why don't I do it? Well, it's probably because I was in fear.
Yeah.
I was scared. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know the direction, or I didn't have the mentor or that direct guideline of, oh, how do I do it?
Yeah.
Where do I start? I think that's the hard part, right? It's starting.
Exactly. And a lot of people think about doing stuff, but executing is a different thing.
Yeah.
It takes guts to execute.
It takes kahunas.
Yeah, like taking a Jesus take the wheel kind of approach to life. You gotta. I think it's a mindset shift at that point. Like you gotta change your mind from being fearful to thinking, oh, what can I learn from this situation or this potential path?
Yeah, it can even be applied to, say, for people who want to start a fitness journey. the hardest part is getting yourself into the gym. And it's the same thing. People don't want to go because one, or I don't know how to use the weight machine,
Yep.
or I don't know how to lift a dumbbell. What if people look at me, or like what if people judge me and I'm doing things funny?
Yeah.
But it's just getting into the gym and trying it, because if you don't try, one, you're never gonna learn, and two, you're only going to assume these things.
You're never gonna know.
Yeah, and by the time you get to the gym, everyone's focused on their own workouts. No one's looking at you,
Yeah.
and everyone starts from one point. So you just got to go
Yeah, to be quite honest, I don't think people give two shits about you. I think,
your form.
yeah, like
Poor form, Junior.
I think most of the time you spend a lot of time in your own head, being scared of what people think
Gonna
of you.
think, yeah.
Mm.
But you know, someone might look at you and go, "Hey, this guy's walks weird," or he's you know,
Duck
he's,
walk.
he's squatting like a dickhead.
Yeah.
They'll just it's just gonna like, you know,
Yeah. So from the motion that you've done, there's been a lot of terms that's been cycling the internet called quiet quitting. We just
Mhm.
wanted to see if you've actually heard that term before.
I have heard of quiet quitting, and alarmingly, one of my ex co-workers asked
Yeah.
me about that.
Before you quit?
Yeah,
Or
before I quit. And like, what are you on about? So obviously he or she has thought about it. I'm not going to throw anyone under the
they,
bus.
it, M.
Yeah. And then I was curious. So I Googled it at that point. But I think if you get to the point of quiet quitting, you're essentially what they call a Harvey Norman.
Why?
You get to 3 years and you have no interest.
Oh, that's a good fucking analogy.
So typically it's like 2 to 3 years, right? You know at that point whether
Yeah.
you're in it or you're not in it,
You're in it to win it, or you're
Yeah.
fucking outies, mate.
or you're there just for the
Interest free.
yeah. If you're there just for the pay, you know,
Play-by.
you have no interest. You're there for 3 years.
Yeah. So what's your thoughts on quiet quitting? Like, you don't believe in it, or
I personally think that you should.
love your job?
You don't necessarily have to love your job, but if you get to that point of quiet quitting, you probably should have left
Yeah.
before you got to that point, you know, because you're wasting your time just doing the bare minimum, putting along in life. You're better off spending that time working on something else, pivoting in your career, or
Learning something
exactly.
new.
You can't waste time. But a lot of people, again, they don't think about their time as being an asset.
It's overlooked.
Yeah, you wake up, do whatever, go to sleep, next day.
And it's just like a rinse and repeat kind of
Exactly.
thing.
Yeah.
Mm.
People live in the moment, and they just do things as things come,
Exactly.
and they don't realize, okay, well, this is time that I'm wasting.
I think it's more like the thought, their mindset at the time is like, this is what I should be doing. And like they just keep going on in that rather than thinking, what do I want to be doing? So that's why they kind of get stuck in that cycle. But there are other factors in terms of
course.
what influences them to do like quiet quitting. Like, for example, if they actually did have a family and this job was still paying well, but it's just they're not enjoying it or whatever, they might want to just stay for that reason.
Yeah, it's the stability financial position thing that Hal was talking about. Like, if it pays the bills and you need to
Yeah,
pay the
yeah.
bills, then you know, you can understand why someone's stuck there.
Yeah, that's a fair call.
What about the term naked quitting? Have you heard about that?
Up until today, no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
neither. Until
You're
we
naked and you
recent-
quit.
Yeah, I thought.
just strip.
Yeah.
I'm out, guys.
I thought it was just you know, one day you just strip down, you
Said,
storm-
fuck it. See you
yeah.
later, guys.
storm
Throw
into your
the
boss's
paper.
office and demand satisfaction. I'm leaving. I honestly haven't heard of
I
it.
actually haven't heard of it until we were looking into this
Yeah.
topic and researching. So it's actually quite an old term. I think it was back in 2010 or something like that. And it was actually called naked resignation, I think it was. And it's essentially a bit of what you've did is quitting but have nothing lined up. So that's what you call naked quitting, because it's just nothing. It's really nothing.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
naked. So yeah, I just want to see if you've heard of that term too. And a lot of these terms actually surprisingly originated from China, because I think Asia, quite a lot of people know that they work really hard, they
Yep.
work long hours, and especially during the pandemic when that came up, they're still required to work really long hours. So at that time, a lot of people around globally just realized mental health is such a important thing, especially around work, and you start to put boundaries in, and that's when all these terms, I think it's been around, but no one has actually put a label or name to it, and this is
Yeah.
when it started to surface more and people started to talk about it.
Yeah. The work culture in Asia is fucked. Like, I think that's one of the biggest things that a lot of Westerners probably don't realize is that the massive difference in the culture shock.
The hustle.
The hustle is just insane. And it's not just working, and it's the after social work that they do
Yeah,
is
because
crazy.
in Asia, it's kind of expected. I don't know if it's all across Asia. I won't speak for all of them, but I know, especially in Hong Kong, you have to work and you're not allowed to leave before your boss leaves. But then if there's a social event, you're expected to go. It's not like are you free to come join along? It's like your boss
You
is
gotta go.
going to a drinking event or like a dinner or whatever. You kind of have to go to
Yeah,
show
right.
face, sort of thing. So it's like doing that, you get home probably 10, 11 o'clock, then you start again at 7. So they work really long hours. So I can
Yeah.
understand why.
Yeah. That's how, like, most of that's why there's a massive high, was it suicides in Asia because of work.
I think in Japan, people sleep like anywhere and everywhere because they're just so overworked. They're just tired. They
Yeah, that's
sleep
why they
Yeah.
have those, I forgot what they're called,
the sleeping pods.
yeah, sleeping pods. And it's like you can hire them like for an hour or something, or even like minutes, just to get a quick fucking nap,
Yeah.
because they're just always on the
I
run.
heard something completely different.
What do you think? Quick fat?
I heard quick fuck.
Oh. Hey, potentially.
I don't know. Anyways, those pods might be a bit small.
Yeah.
But before you actually quitted,
Mm-hmm.
were there things that you had to consider, like outside of wanting to start a business and work towards that goal? Were there things like financially or like, how to sustain yourself for the next few months kind of thing?
Absolutely, especially the finance side of things. So because I thought about it earlier on, I started to get my finances in order. So that was basically me knowing where every one of my dollars was going, paying down any bad debt, not getting into any consumer debt, and just hustling, sticking to my budget as best as I could, and building up that kind of that golden goose type of thing, where it was basically in a bank account called my FU money. So if I want to say, FU, I'm out.
Yeah.
That's
That's
my
pretty
safety
cool.
net.
Nice.
FU money is for like long term,
What
Yeah.
a motivator.
Yeah. So I did think about that, and alongside that, I kind of plotted out my next steps in my career. So I found my passion after so many years doing. I'm not sure if I mentioned before, I did a few odd jobs here and there. I worked in like bakeries and did a bit of cabinet making, all kinds of shit. Just did volunteer work as well, just to find what I liked. It took me a decade to find out basically what I was passionate about.
Is this during you were doing the IT and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wasn't like consciously thinking about it all the time, but after you go through some shit, you got to take a step back and look of what did I learn from that? I learned that, I don't do well in stressful situations. I don't do well with, this or that. You know what your strengths are at that point. So then you subconsciously in your mind, you know yourself a bit better every time you fail or do something that doesn't work out.
Yeah.
So basically you fail often, but then you have to learn life lessons from those failures. And I figured out that I liked helping people, and using, through technology as well, because I found that I liked the tech industry, but I didn't like the support side of things, like dealing with their problems and not really making change at scale. You're just like fixing little things here and there, putting out fires.
Yeah.
That's why I jumped to where I am now, where I moving into a role where I can create or work on projects that basically like apps and websites and stuff that can help people make their lives easier.
Yeah.
It's like a different perspective, but in the same industry.
I can
Mhm.
understand that.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah, it's like you're in a space of IT where you're developing and improving certain processes,
Yeah,
whether it's
yeah.
through apps or just
Yep.
changing things.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, if it helps someone just by their standard process,
Yep.
that is fulfilling to you.
Yeah, it's like digital transformation, I think they call it in the industry, like they're changing tangible tools from like, spreadsheets, paper, that sort of stuff, to
Automation
more
and stuff.
streamlined digital platforms where
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can do it at a couple of clicks of a button rather than
Opening like 5 Excel.
Yeah.
even from the finance side, like the banking and finance, like I had a same experience. I had an opportunity to basically be on was it analytical side of things, where you're basically working to improve processes and systems. Like that excited me for a bit in that space, and to see things automated, it's just fucking like.
Man, automation is like the best shit ever.
Yeah.
Just do something and it does it for you.
And now that you realize how things work with tech, and then you go backwards and you go, what the fuck is this shit?
Yeah.
It's just eye opening. Yeah.
Mm.
So I can understand where you're coming from.
So another question we wanted to ask was, before you did this, where you quit and didn't really line up another job, essentially, were you always okay with that? Because you said that very early on you were listening to your parents and like, stick to your job, that kind of thing. Were you always okay with just being able to follow your heart, or was it something that you changed recently?
Hell no. No way. Like, it's just instinct in the beginning, in the early days, to be scared of stuff. And that's where I was. I was never okay with just quitting without anything to go to, because in my mind, I was like, I have to work. I need money to survive. My relationship with money at that point wasn't as mature as it is now. I now realize that money is just a tool that you use to get you to the next step, right? So it's not really the be all and end all.
Yeah.
So once I got my head around, like my personal finances and everything, I slowly built up the confidence to say, I don't need to put myself in this situation. I can just quit,
Mm.
regather my thoughts, reset, and move on to the next thing.
Yeah. And I also heard from another podcast, I think it was like the Rise and Conquer podcast, because she's talking about relationship with like money and just self-awareness and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like, the more you're worried about your money and holding on to it,
Yep.
the less you're actually going to give yourself the ability to gain money, because you're not investing. Like, for example, if you wanted to work on your mental health or something, but it's like $5,000 to go see that many sessions of psychology, you're still going to struggle like mentally, but you haven't invested in yourself. But if you let yourself go, allow yourself to spend that money, and now you're in a good mental space, that kind of compounds into you being able to work on yourself or work on your business or whatever it is. Then you in return get more money
Exactly.
because you're in a better place.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's my train of thought right now. It's just,
The foundation.
yeah, it's getting yourself into a position where you are not in a survival mindset. So then you can focus on creating stuff and moving into the next phase of your life, whatever that might be. You might start a business, or move into another role, pivot, change careers, whatever.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to recalibrate, because
Exactly.
even in Google Maps, it tells you to recalibrate sometimes when it's like the compass is just everywhere. It's directing you in all different directions. It's not correct. And it's kind of the same with you or anyone who's just trying to do everything at the same time and then trying to stick by it just because you know that you need to, that kind of thing. But you sometimes just have to stop and
Yep.
recalibrate just to get the clearer direction of where you need to go.
Yep.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from in terms of how you think. Because for me, I'm very much like, you need a job before you have something lined up, at
Mhm.
least before you just go, nah, fuck it, see you later.
Yep.
And I think from my perspective, having a job is, it's such a, like with the standards of the industries in general nowadays, it's having a job is important. It's just like, it's a commodity that you just have to have.
Yeah,
'Cause
now it's
jobs-
even like required to have like a side gig or like a side project
Yeah,
or whatever.
but not just that, but you see people losing jobs like left, right, and center. And like you said, the finance component, yeah, it is important. Yeah, it is a tool that we use, but also something that we need as well to survive.
Yeah, absolutely.
We live to slave to pay our bills, but to do other things as well, right? So I guess for me, I've always had that mentality of, fuck, at least have something there, side income, whether it's small or big. At least you've got something on the side to give you something to eat and pay bills. And I think a part of, if you want to call it fear of not having a job lined up or having a job in general, I've been in a situation where you've been made redundant, and it's difficult to find another job because of the industry all that time.
Yeah.
Mm.
So being in that situation, it's a struggle. It's a struggle street. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But like that's the thing that, me and you, Sam, have talked about it in the past because, I'm quite with Hal where it's more so understanding yourself and feeling how you're feeling mentally. And I am more than happy to quit with nothing in line if it's actually affecting my mental health. And it's, yeah, like that's the thing. I don't really like to say things like you need to slave to work and get money. I think because that's the mindset you're telling yourself is that you need to slave. And that's why you feel like you have to chase the next job. So that's the one thing that I didn't really agree with in terms of you need to have something lined up, especially if it's affecting your mental health. But obviously, if you know that you've got no savings, like you have to
Oh
do
yeah,
something
you're
about
gonna
that.
have to you're
Yeah.
gonna have to struggle for a bit. But put it this way, right? If you slave and push yourself to keep working and saving money at the cost of your own health, eventually your body's just going to give in. You're gonna have to use those savings to look after yourself anyway.
Yeah.
So it's what do you do? Do you stop working at a point where you know yourself well enough? This is enough. Focus on resetting. It's kind of like a bow and arrow, right? You got to pull back before you can shoot forwards. You
That's
can't
really
you
good.
can't keep moving forwards all the time. It's just like the stock market. Things go up, things go down. The weather changes. It's sunny one day, it's rainy the next. It's the same thing with life.
Mm.
You can't have sunny days every day.
Yeah.
You gotta enjoy yourself to an extent. I know some people are okay just having 1 or 2 days off a week to reset. Some people need more time.
Yeah. Because even when you reset, like if you do take 2 months or however long you need, then you get back, you may be even more motivated than
Exactly.
you being
Yeah.
half motivated and be like, oh, maybe this will work out. You don't know. But when you've reset it, you're like, yeah, I'm clear on where I want to go. This is what I want to work towards. And you're putting your whole heart into it now.
I think it's not. I think another perspective is not just stopping work. I think it's taking a break. Because
Yeah.
I think some people, like you said, some people can just take 1 or 2 days and they're all Gucci. But for me, I need at least 2 weeks.
It's all dependent on each individual person's.
Situation, yeah, and personality, what people need. But in saying that though, for you personally, what do you feel is the fine line or like the cues that tells you if it's something that's affecting your mental health or if it's something that you should just stick by and it's temporary?
Oh, it's hard to answer that because everyone's got different thresholds of pain.
Yeah.
Some people are more sensitive to negative environments than others.
Mm,
For me personally, my personal experience was that I started to have physical symptoms from stress.
yeah.
So it was in the form of skin breakouts, weight fluctuation, going up and down. My sleep was greatly affected. Like I just wake up in the middle of the night panicking for no reason.
Wow.
Like
Jeez.
it was that bad.
Yeah.
And even to the point where I had a panic attack at work one day.
Oh really?
Just from one support phone call that came in, it just triggered me.
My
Shit.
computer's not turning
I
on.
can't remember what it was, but
Yeah.
I had to step away. And
Yeah.
at that point, I'm like, this is not right.
Can you explain briefly like what a panic attack in your experience was?
It was just an overwhelming feeling of doom, basically. Like your heart starts racing, you start sweating like there's no tomorrow,
Yeah.
and you just can't think.
Yeah, I've had a few of those like during work as well. It's just like it's like a spiral. Like you have all these like negative thoughts. Like
Yeah.
for me personally, it's like you have negative thoughts, but at the same time, I'm telling myself that it's okay. But then it's like, no, you're not okay. This is what's happening. Blah blah blah. And your head's
Yeah.
like running at like 10,000 miles per hour, and you're just like going back and forth, and your heart's just like
Yep.
pumping really fast. And then you're like, okay, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, and that's when I reached out for professional help, and they put me on Zoloft for a bit.
Mm,
It's an antidepressant, and that I didn't feel like it worked well. So then at about I think 2 months, I just went cold turkey. I was like, nah, this is just a Band-Aid fix. That's when I went on my personal development journey. I just started to research different ways to deal with those emotions, how to better myself, so then I can better react to specific situations.
or
And
like
there's some-
prepare yourself before you get to that point.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's some good content out there from different creators, and it just comes like, for example, panic attacks. I went so far as to understand neurologically why it happens, and what I found was that it comes from this area in your brain called the amygdala, right?
Mm,
And that's your fight or flight part of your brain.
yeah.
You just got to tell yourself when you end up in a situation, is this situation I'm in, am I going to die from it? If not, then it's an intellectual fear. And at that point, it's like it doesn't happen immediately, but over time you pull yourself back when you have those thoughts. You can't control the first thought that comes into your head, but you can control the second thought that comes into your head, right? That's where you need to catch yourself. So, if someone you're working with, like, says, "Oh, you work shit" or something like that, and that triggers you, you need to work on how you react to that, basically, and just remind
Yeah.
yourself it's not the end of the world. I'm not going to
Yeah.
die from this, basically.
That's a really good question, actually, to just think to yourself when you're in these situations.
Yeah, and I found that stops your thoughts spiraling into the abyss of thoughts.
Your mind's is really noisy.
Yeah, that happens a lot when you lie down and at night when you're trying to sleep, right?
Yeah, because your mind goes crazy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in terms of saying you woke up in the middle of the night, how did you correlate that to work as opposed to you just couldn't sleep? Or did you wake up thinking about work?
I was always worried about work. Yeah, I had situations going on at work where I was put in a position where I had some major problems to deal with, but I didn't have the support I needed at work. So I was
you deal with it kind of
yeah,
thing.
and like I did reach out and try to ask for help, but it just either people weren't willing to help, or the resources were spread too thin. So then I had to, I guess in a way it was a good thing because that forced me to learn things that I wasn't particularly experienced in to try and solve the problem. At the same time, it fucked my sleep.
Yeah.
And that's what I was thinking about at night. Like, oh, how am I going to resolve this problem? How am I going to take the next steps to, get this sorted?
Yeah, like definitely when it happens in that kind of sense in terms of like your sleep or panic attacks, I think that's a definite clear sign
Yeah,
that it's something that's, affecting your mental health.
Yeah, especially when you're trying to sleep too, and then you just
Yeah.
wake up and you're like, "Fuck," you're thinking
Yeah,
about
it was-
work and stuff like that. But what I was going to say before was, it's really sad to know that when you seek professional help, the first thing they give you is a fucking pill to try and help you with it.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that we always say this with our guests who have seek professional help, is the fact that for you to sit there and self-reflect first and foremost, but secondly to actually go, fuck, what are the techniques that I can think from a mindset point of view to help you, I guess, improve the way you would think in those situations, as opposed to going, oh, let's just rely on the pill, let's just rely on what the doc says. That's fucking huge, man. Because a lot of people don't realize those just self-diagnosis or even just self-help, you know what I mean? And for you to actually Google it and go, okay, let's reflect. How can I improve myself in those situations is fucking massive. So
Yeah.
I think that's really good that you figured that out yourself, because a lot of people don't.
Yeah,
Mm.
as sad as it is, it's very true.
It's like for me, I like to take a lot of natural approaches, like even getting sick or whatever it is, like even skin right now, I'm similar. My skin's like breaking out and I've never had breakouts and stuff. And a lot of people would advise, go to the doctors, check it out, and they might give you like some sort of acne thing to like a medication for it. But I'd rather look into my diet, see like, am I sleeping good and looking onto all that kind of stuff. And at the moment, I'm seeing a traditional Chinese medicine like person to try and fix it from within because I want it to be fixed for the long term rather
Yeah.
than short term. And I think that can be applied to just that mental health thing and like working and giving yourself a break too. Because if you fix it from the ground up, you know that you're good for the long run rather than just a quick fix.
Yeah, exactly.
So you did mention earlier before too that you worked in IT, you dabbled in a lot of different industries. So when you had your career change, like did you have similar like feelings and thoughts as well in terms of quitting?
Earlier on in my life, I was chopping and changing jobs for the purpose of finding what I like to do. But as I went on that journey and I did volunteer work and whatever else, I started to kind of focus. And my career changes in the recent years have been more, there's more intent behind it, basically. So
Yeah.
I knew what I was doing at that point, but early on I didn't. So it's kind of like what's that double diamond technique in user research.
Yeah.
Divergent thinking, where you go out and you explore what you like, and then convergent thinking, you come back and you focus.
Mm,
It's kind of like that kind of approach.
yeah. And you're young too. You can like try all these different things and see what you like,
Yeah,
what you
exactly.
don't like.
When it comes to career changes, I think I was very similar too. Because in my earlier years, it's kind of like you're trying to figure out yourself. So you're just like, oh fuck, I don't know the direction of where I want to go, but it's just a matter of just putting yourself out there, trying it, and figuring it out.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I resonate very much with you in terms of how you dabbled in different areas. Like you did fucking bakery shit, you did all this labourer stuff.
Yeah.
Same thing with me. Like fucking, what was I doing? I was doing bloody, I was an apprentice, modifying cars, doing that shit, and then bloody doing, was it table games dealer at fucking Treasury Casino?
Yeah.
And
Didn't you do IT for a bit too?
I did IT as well.
Yeah.
I studied IT and I tried to do IT, and I was like, fuck, the same thing with you. I can't deal with fucking putting out fires for people.
Yeah.
To the point where it's kind of like, okay, banking and finance, I spent so much time in it, and it's just like, okay, do I enjoy it? Yeah, I do to some extent, but I wouldn't say it's something that I fucking love, right? But I think it's a skill set that, you invest in the time, and it's a skill set that you just hone and you master over time. And I think, for me, it's just coming to the point where you go, okay, this is something that I want to stick with. But I guess the whole point of it was initially you go out there and you dick around, you try and figure yourself out. But at the end of it, you go, okay, now I have intent behind why I'm moving around.
Yep.
That's the same story or journey for me as well.
Yeah. And I think at the same time, because like going back into that question, like, is it something that's affecting your mental health, or if it's something that you just need to stick by? Or you, like Sam, when you're saying that I'm okay to just like, it's not something that you love, banking and finance, but I'm okay to stick with it. I think that's the main thing. Like, as long as you yourself is mentally okay to stick with something that you don't 100% love, and that's fine. But I think if it's a person where something that they don't love, but they're just sticking around, but it's making them depressed, they don't want to go to work, they can't get off the couch and stuff, then that's probably something where you need to think about moving on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that those are the cues that you have to ask yourself. Is it affecting you? Like how I was saying, your physical self, your mental health. I think that's your deciding point as to whether it's, hey, should I fucking say see you later, go somewhere else?
Or am I okay to just stick around or stick with this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just each person and how they feel, and also just understanding themselves.
Yeah.
On the flip side of quitting and then now doing your own thing and just working on your mental health, when do you know that it's like a good time to go back to work?
That's a really good question. It's very relative to each individual person's situation and personality. For me, I went through this phase of, absolute bliss after I resigned. It felt like a massive weight.
This is the best thing in the world.
Yeah, like it was so good, just having that feeling of freedom.
Yeah.
And at that point, at some point that peaks, and you've done a lot of these activities that you're catching up on life. Basically, you go fishing or whatever, do whatever you love doing, and you get kind of sick of it, and then you're like, oh shit, what's next? I think at that point for me, I was like, okay, I need to actually start focusing now on my actual plan, moving to the next stage of my career. So whatever that time frame is, I think there's other things too as well. Depending on your financial situation, how low have you?
How much have you dipped into that savings?
The FU money.
Yeah, that FU money. How much have you? How much have you used of that? How much of a runway do you have left? You got to ask yourself that too. There's different variables, I think.
Yeah.
So it's hard to to answer that question with some sort of structure. It just depends on
your situation. Right?
Yeah, like you'll know it. Like you could be like 1 month in, 2 months in, 3 months in, but
I think what you said is, I wouldn't say accurate, but I think it reflects on, I guess, the time off. Like you said, it's kind of like that fucking, what's it, like stocks, how it goes up and goes down.
Yeah.
You have your me time,
and
you get to catch up on life, do whatever you want to do. And it gets to a certain point when you go, fuck, what am I doing now?
Yeah.
Right. And then it's just like, okay, let's start focusing on my career now.
Yeah. I think as humans, we always have to have this sense of purpose. Like you do something, you have to be purposeful, or you need to feel like you're doing it with intent, with purpose.
You're achieving something. Right?
Yeah, at the point where you lose that sense of purpose, I think that's when you got to start to
reconsider. Or like recalibrate.
Yep, that's probably a good indicator that it's time.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I think another one I'd probably add from me personally is like, you've had your time off. Like this could be a break, a holiday, whatever it is. You've had your time off, but then you're starting to be curious again. Like you're like, oh, I wonder what's this like now in this industry, or like I want to try this out. Like you find yourself starting to be curious or wanting to work into a certain area or learn about something, that's when you're kind of ready to go back and work or do something.
I just thought of how fucking shoving loaf breads into the VCR because
Did
you're
you-
curious.
Did you actually do
Yeah, I
that?
did. That's actually a true story.
You're like, ooh.
Yeah, I think I was like 2 or 3 years old. My mum
Oh,
told me
really?
I was in my walking chair,
the
and
ones with the wheels.
yeah.
Yeah.
and I just shoved an entire sandwich into the VCR. And my grandpa found it. I think,
Oh my
he went
goodness.
to watch some Chinese drama or something.
Trying
and
to wind the
Yeah.
sandwich backwards.
yeah, so
I can just imagine like his reaction or something. Like, huh?
Yeah.
Oh.
yeah, I was a naughty kid. I was like,
Oh, that's so funny.
I set fire to things.
Did
with,
you?
Yeah, with magnifying glasses and
What?
yeah,
Yeah, because when you do the
Ah,
reflection of the sun.
yeah. Learned that from Toy Story. I think it was.
Oh yeah.
Is it Toy Story?
Something like
Yeah,
that.
I think it is.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's, yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. But you always got to feed your curiosity, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's humane, or I mean, it's human to be curious in
Mm.
general, right?
So after all these experience, if the situation happened again, do you think you would naked quit again?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if your gut was telling you to.
Yep.
Mm.
But with calculated risk.
Yeah.
Not just throw in.
See you later, I'm out.
Yeah, because that's you'd land in a situation where you're in a survival mindset.
Yeah.
It's very hard to focus when you're trying to think of where you're going to make the next dollar or how you're going to feed your kids, pay the bills, that sort of stuff.
Mm. So
Yeah.
from that, where to next? Hao Tran?
At the moment, I'm still upskilling. There's a few certain areas I know that I need work on.
Yeah.
So I'm just
In your industry or
yeah, in the product design, UI UX realm.
Nice.
Mm.
So I'm just spending time.
Upgrading your
Yeah.
CPU and your memory bits.
Yeah,
eh?
pretty much. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Just learning what I can, updating my portfolio, and then gonna hit the job market again.
Nice.
Yeah.
This boy's gonna be back on the market soon. Actually, we'll finish it off because you said when you were trying to work on yourself, what are some podcasts or resources that you could share for people who did want to learn or read more about self-help?
Rob Dial, he has a podcast. He's branded himself as a mindset mentor, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's really good. Jay Shetty.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
love
Yeah,
Jay
he's good.
Shetty.
After a while, you find a few different guys. They communicate very similar core content.
Messaging.
Yeah, so they're probably the two main ones that
Yeah.
I
What did you love
binge.
about those, like particularly?
I like Rob's content because he backed his content up with actual science.
Yep.
I think he mentioned in some of his other podcasts that he has neuroscientists or psychologists and stuff on his team that actually works with him.
Oh, that's
so
really cool.
yeah, so it's actual. It's
Proven.
not just like
I'm talking shit.
Yeah,
Here you go.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm, yeah.
Yep.
And Jay Shetty.
Jay Shetty. Yeah, he's all right.
Well, you made it to your top two, so
I actually found Jay through one of Rob's podcasts.
yeah,
He's got a very interesting life story too, and that's what.
got you on.
That's what engaged me about him.
Yeah, because it was like a monk for
Yeah.
a few years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah. Anyways,
Nice.
that is our episode on is it okay to quit without anything lined up? And if you're going through something similar, let us know in the comments below because we'd love to hear your journey as well. And that is all for today.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us, Hal.
No worries. Happy to be here.
Love all the analogies.
Yeah.
Jesus taking the wheel. Was it farts
Yeah.
turns into shit?
Yeah, push. It's like
Push
a
too
fart.
much.
Yeah.
It's a shot, isn't it?
Push hard enough, it turns to shit.
Anyone else have good analogies? Put it down in the comments below. And that's it for today. And see
Peace.
ya. Bye.